Hi, everyone. This is 𝗧𝗏𝗚𝗚𝗘𝗦𝗧𝗘𝗗, and I'm here with Scatena today, a legend in the creative industry. And Jim, thank you so much for being with us today, and really excited to talk to you about your journey.
Hi, this is 𝗧𝗏𝗚𝗚𝗘𝗏. Thanks for joining the Creative Retail Talks podcast today, where we will be discussing the latest in life, business, and retail.
So after Wilton, and I definitely want to talk about FloraCraft because I know you spent the majority of your career there. But real quick, before you went to FloraCraft, I think you made one more stop. So tell us about that.
Yeah, I did. Again, I've had a blessed life, and I've probably been with, at least in those cases, two of the most creative companies of all.
Yeah.
That was Crayola. I had run the gamut through the sales department at Wilton. I went from a territory manager in Pittsburgh, and within less than a year, they transferred me to the West Coast as a district manager. And you know, again, another blessing of this industry in my career was it showed me and my family the entire country. We lived in Pittsburgh, we lived in Sacramento, California, we lived in Chicago a number of times, we lived in Eastern Pennsylvania, we lived in Columbus, Ohio, and it was good. It was good for us as a family. It kept us tight because when you got to the new town, the only people you really knew and trusted were the same people that were under the same roof with you. So,
right.
And for my kids in particular, they're very social because when they got to the next town, it was up to them to make new friends, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I got so at Wilton, I was a sales guy, you know, and I went right up the ladder through the various field management positions, national accounts manager, handled all the big customers, and ultimately I became VP of sales. But I knew, you know, and I had a dream that someday I wanted to be either a general manager or a CEO, that I had to round out my career. I couldn't just be in sales my entire career. I needed more exposure. And my mentor at Wilton kind of knew that, and he accepted that, but he said, but you're a damn good sales guy, so we're going to keep you in sales. So I got a call from a recruiter about an opportunity back in my home state of Pennsylvania that combined the sales and marketing responsibilities. And that was with a company called 𝗬𝗓𝗏𝗧𝗘𝗏𝗏, but most people knew us as Crayola. And that became a great career move for me. And it helped me round out my skills because I had good marketing exposure with a great marketing company. But they also had a company culture that allowed you to poke your nose. You want to be involved in a finance committee? Come on in. You want to be involved in operations and manufacturing? You're on your own time, do it. And so they really, really helped me round out my career. And for me, what I had learned about the craft business from some of my best friends in the industry, guys like Stan Clifford and Mike McCooey, I learned a little bit about the paint business. Well, Crayola had acquired a company in Cincinnati, Ohio called Permanent Pigments. And Crayola merged them in and rebranded them as Liquitex. And we had what was known as the Liquitex brand of fine art materials. And because of my craft experience, management asked me to take over that business and sort of, I don't want to say move, but you know, we saw ourselves as two overlapping circles, art and craft. And we knew that there was a certain amount of overlap, not an overtake, but an overlap, that some people involved in the fine art market could migrate to the craft side, and some people involved in the craft industry could migrate to the fine art side. So that's what we did. We put together a tremendous team of sales and marketing people. I had the best sales force in the world. Some of those guys and gals grew up through the industry. One of my most notable was a guy named Paul Inskip, who went on to be a senior leader at 𝗧𝗏𝗚𝗏𝗘𝗏𝗏 on the soft craft side. And we designed product. We worked with our chemists to make paints that were more usable by crafters. We were right smack dab in the middle of fabric painting. So a heck of a boost from the consumer again. And I spent a number of years there at Crayola, really not so much on the Crayola side, which was kind of funny. because normally crayons went in first and then everything else happened. In our
Yeah.
case, fine art materials and brought crayons along with it. And so I spent a number of years at Crayola, again, helped me really understand marketing, packaging, consumer insight. They were very big into talking to moms about what we could do better. If we've got a second, I could tell you a funny product development story.
Yeah, go for it.
While I was there, crayons were king, right? Crayola crayons were king, especially that box of 64 with the sharpener on the side.
Yes.
Which ground all your crayons down to nothing, so you had to buy another box. All kids used crayons, and truthfully, we had huge market share because we had really good quality. Someone in our group, someone smarter than me, talked about kids at the older age were migrating out because they thought crayons were for kids, right? Their little brother, and they wanted to paint and color with markers. So we got into the marker business, and that was really good. And it was all plus business. But when we talked to our moms, they hated our markers because they were permanent.
Yeah.
Right? And, we've all had a nice leather couch with a picture of a dog on the back of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, super smart. And they, the chemists, invented the washable marker. We were the first major company out with a washable marker.
Yeah. Brilliant invention.
Guess what happened? Now that we had washable markers, 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds can use them. And all of a sudden, we had a dilemma. Kids were migrating away from crayons and going to washable markers because they wanted to be like their big brother.
Oh, wow.
So in a sense, it was a brilliant decision, but it's a lesson in thinking through the unintended consequences.
Yeah.
We didn't realize the impact on our most loyal market by creating a new market. And it took us a number of years to kind of balance that out, get back to the young kids, motivate them. And the beauty was it made us, for children, a lifelong brand. They could start out at 3 with a crayon, move up to a washable marker, move up to a permanent marker. And then if we could move them into fine art. There was always a gap there in the preteen, early teen years where kids thought art wasn't so cool anymore. They were playing soccer and they were, going out for football and in the band, and, boys found out about girls and girls found out about boys, and nobody wanted a marker anymore. And so we would see this gap in creativity with young people, and then we'd hope to grab onto them again earlier in their high school years, and then maybe send them off to art school to be a graphic designer or something like that. So we worked very hard to close that gap with art education programs, museum programs, things like that. We never completely closed it. Well, we kept a lot, and it's interesting today. I go to more art shows at our local galleries and our community college where there's art produced by young people, teenagers, because now with the internet, they've got more access to inspiration. With the expansion of art material stores, they have more places they can go. So all in all, it was a good stay at Crayola. Again, made lifelong friends there, some that I still stay in touch with, before I made the move to Michigan to get in the styrofoam business.
Yes. All right. So let's talk about styrofoam. And you've done a great job of describing kind of the lessons you learned in those positions before FloraCraft that prepared you, I think, for the role at FloraCraft. But tell us about kind of the transition of FloraCraft and what the shift was like there to become leader, and what that was like for you personally.
Yeah, it was. I was there almost 21 years before I retired, and again, fortunate enough to have an amazing experience. Another family-owned business here in Western Michigan. It had actually started back in the 1940s. when the Dow Chemical Company was producing styrofoam to use as flotation billets in the hulls of battleships during World War II. It gave
Oh,
them,
wow.
and we happen, I'm in a little town called Ludington, Michigan. We're a beach resort town right on Lake Michigan, and there's a Dow Chemical plant here. And the predecessor to FloraCraft was a company that made, in those days, they would have called them permanent flowers. They would scour the beaches of West Michigan, all Lake Michigan, and they would harvest ferns and beach grass and things like that.
Mhm.
They would dry them, preserve them after they would dry them, and then in some cases add color to them. So in the late 1940s, these were the artificial flowers. You know, think about it. Plastics hadn't really developed into the consumer market.
Right.
So the artificial or permanent flowers that we know today didn't exist. So people, florists would buy these, mix them with fresh flowers to create floral arrangements. The interesting thing was, before styrofoam, floral arrangements were made, and this is for the country kids out there, not the city kids, with chicken wire. A lot of people know what chicken wire is, but it's a fencing material that has open cells in it, and you can shape it, you know, in a chicken coop. It's used to make the fence or the gate. But florists would take chicken wire, and let's say just roll it into a cylinder, and then they would insert floral stems. And again, you got to be an old timer to remember this, but a floral arrangement, they would take a live stem, take a little plastic tube that had a rubber cap on the top, fill it with water, put the stem of the flower in that tube to keep it alive, because floral foam hadn't been invented yet. And they would insert all those in the openings in the chicken wire. And creative people, if you wanted to make a floral arrangement that looked like a, you know, that looked like a teddy bear, you would mold the foam to, or the chicken wire to look like a teddy bear, and then put these permanent artificial flowers. They weren't artificial; they were real flowers. So here you have a company in the floral industry, and a company about a mile away making styrofoam. It was Dow Chemical's oldest plant, and they used to have scrap when they would make chunks of styrofoam, or if they'd cut it up to make it fit something custom, they'd have this scrap. And the owner of FloraCraft knew about this scrap material, so he said, "You guys just throw that away?" Or they'd say, "Yeah, we landfill it or we grind it up." And he'd say, "Can I have it so when I color these big ferns, I can stick it in the foam to dry so it'll hold it upright, and you know, and then you guys are just throwing it away anyway, and then we'll sell it to the florist who will use the chicken wire to make the floral arrangement." And they said, "Sure." And then one day he said, maybe florists could use this foam to do arrangements, and not just us as a supplier. So he began to cut styrofoam that he bought from the Dow Chemical Company into shapes. Initially, they were, you know, balls and squares and cones, very popular. And FloraCraft became you know, kind of a major supplier to the floral industry. And that went through the 50s and 60s. And, you know, this is kind of where the stories overlap. They were around when the craft boom started in, you know, in the 70s and 80s. And they too had access to Ben Franklin, because Ben Franklin used to have artificial flower departments. And so they jumped on the craft ship at the same time and started to move forward. So in those days, the idea became popular all over the country. Down there in Texas, there was trying to think of the fabricator's name now. That's Floral Supply Syndicate, I think it was.
Yes.
Out on the West Coast, there was a company called Snow Foam. There was a big operation in New Jersey because foam was kind of hard to truck around and get to various places. So
Yeah.
all of the fabricators, the styrofoam fabricators, were scattered across the country. There was one in Milwaukee, there was one in Arkansas, and they serviced their local markets that they could deliver to. So, you know, in 1997, I'm sitting in my office and I get a phone call from a gentleman named 𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗏, who was the CEO or chairman of the board of FloraCraft. He was the second generation. His uncle had started the company. And again, another lesson about networking. He said to me, I got this company. You might have heard of it. And matter of fact, it was in early days, it was known as custom foam before FloraCraft. And I would bump into them at trade shows and things like that, but they were kind of a sleepy company, just working around the upper Midwest.
Yeah.
It says, you know, we're starting to grow and we're starting to hear about these people like Michaels and Hobby Lobby and Walmart. I need to bring someone. No, yeah, he said, I need to bring someone into the company who could help us, you know, grow to the next level. And he said, I've done some research and your name came up and I'm wondering if you could help me find somebody. I said, well, you know, that's kind of the guy I've always been. I love to help people and I'll go back to my roots. I said, sure, you know, let me see what I can do. 24 hours later, my phone rang again and it was him. Just tell you something about 𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗏. Persistent bugger. He said, just call me to see if you got any names for me. I mean, literally, it was like 24 hours. And, you know, in the back of my head, I'm thinking, you know, I'm running a couple $100 million company here. And
not really in the recruiting business right now.
I leave that up to 𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗏, you know?
Yeah.
So I said, well, actually, I haven't. But, you know, knowing now that you're kind of in a hurry, let me warm up the Rolodex, and if people remember what a Rolodex was. And so he said, well, actually, I was kind of hoping maybe you'd be interested. And what I came to find out later was he's still alive and he still owns the company. He's a very resourceful guy. And when he knew he had to go out and find someone, he called two customers of his. He called Walmart and talked to the craft buyer and said, I'm conducting a search, which is good news for you because I'm going to bring a CEO in. I've never had a CEO. And I'm wondering if you might recommend somebody. He also called out on the East Coast, an old dear friend and a guy who made a big impact on the craft industry, 𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 at 𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. And he said, Peppy, looking for a CEO in the craft industry. So if you got any names, I'd appreciate it. Well, by the grace of God, he got two lists with three people on each list. 3 names from Walmart, 3 names from 𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. And my name happened to be on both lists. Boom. He just scored a touchdown.
Yeah.
And that's why he tracked me down and called me. He knew I had a built-in customer base and, you know, had some experience in the craft industry. And so we talked, you know, we talked after that phone call. And so I went home that night and I said to my wife, keep getting a call from this guy about this company. And, you know, my goal was to become a CEO and I'm not going to be a CEO at Wilton. Or, you know, I'm not going to be a CEO at Crayola. And she said, where's the company based? And I said, Michigan. And she said, no.
Too cold.
Do you want to think about it? I said, yeah, let me think about it. No. And I said, why? And she said, I don't want to live in Detroit. And I said, yeah, I don't think I want to live in Detroit either. It's not my kind of town. So I called him back the next day and I said, hey, I really appreciate it. Thank you, but I'm going to have to turn you down. And he said, why? And I said, my wife and I, you know, we've benefited by living in some great places around the country. And, you know, that whole Detroit thing. And he was like, we're not in Detroit. And in Michigan, you know, they show you the state by the size of their hand. You tell people where you're from. And he said, Detroit's over here. We're right here on Lake Michigan. That still didn't mean much to me. He said, I'll tell you what, pick a weekend, drive over on a Friday. I'll take care of all the arrangements. You spend Friday, Saturday, and Sunday looking around this beautiful beach community. And if you don't like it, you just go home. But if you think it might be interesting, I'll meet you for breakfast on Monday morning. So we drove over on a Friday night. It was a terrible lightning and thunderstorm. My wife was, not bought into this thing at all. As a matter of fact, she kept saying, we were staying in a little motel here, which is a beautiful motel called Snyder's. And she would say, Snyder's Motel, wasn't that hotel in Psycho? And then every time the lightning would flash and I was driving, the lightning would flash and she was sitting beside me, she'd go, She wasn't having anything with this Michigan story.
Yeah.
So we pulled in close to midnight. It was pitch black. We checked into this cute little motel, which we didn't know was literally right on Lake Michigan. And we woke up the next morning, got a good night's rest, and she opened the drapes in the room and she looked out and her eyes got wide. And she said, is that an ocean? Because, Lake Michigan is 70 miles across. It's a big.
It looks like an ocean. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we decided this could be fun. And we spent the weekend, and it's a small town, and we interacted with people. And as a matter of fact, on Monday, obviously I stayed for the Monday breakfast. When I went through for a tour of the factory, some of the factory workers came up to me and they said, oh, you're the guy we saw at the grocery store on Sunday.
Wow.
Small town, man. Nobody misses anything. But there was a part of that I liked. I felt this closeness of a small town, and I put together. I was fortunate enough to bring some of the people that I've met and worked with in the craft industry, brought them together over the next couple of years. And what we did eventually was we focused on two things. We focused on the customer, and we listened to our customers' needs, and they knew a lot more about the business than we did. Mm-hmm. And we listened to the people that worked for us. We listened to the factory, how we could do things better, make things better, avoid labor disruptions, things like that. And one of the things that I knew from talking to the customers was, as this business and this industry was growing, the pressure on supply chain management and logistics, it wasn't about necessarily always having the best product or the best price. You had to have it on the shelf. And if you'll let me, I'm going to go back to the beginning of my career, back in the old days when purchase orders were literally written by hand. And I was a young trainee at JCPenney, and there was a fad driven by a football player, Joe Namath. He put $9.99 popcorn popper, and everybody had to have a Joe Namath popcorn popper. So you couldn't get them. It was hard to get them. They would sell out as soon as you put them on an end cap. And so I remember the first time a district manager came to work with me, and I was just nervous Nelly. I didn't know what to expect. But I put my best JCPenney necktie on, and we were walking through the store, and we came up to an empty end cap, empty, completely empty, which I was really proud of, that empty end cap. Because I
good sell through, right?
Sold out 144 popcorn poppers over the weekend. Empty end cap. And he taught me the value of an end cap and how important it was and how much traffic walked by it and how an empty end cap wasn't necessarily a good thing. And the way he taught me was, he said, what's going on here? I said, popcorn, Joe Namath popcorn poppers, sold them all out. He says, how many did you sell? I said, 144. How many do you have on order? I said, at least 288. He said, let's go back in the shipping department, pull the pink copy of the order, because that's when the order would come in, they would receive it. And let's check on that number, let's make sure you got enough. So we walked through the warehouse. He pulled the pink slip out. He walked back out to the empty end cap, took a piece of tape, and he taped the pink slip on the empty end cap. Now, I'm all ears. I'm trying to learn. Mm-hmm. And I said, why did you do that? And he said, so when customers come by and they want to buy a popcorn popper, they can write their name on that. And I was like, oh, that's a good idea. He said, it's a terrible idea. Your end cap's empty. Put something on there you can sell. People aren't going to write their name on it. So I got humbled and a lesson in the same instant.
A great learning moment, sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been good. So great time at FloraCraft. We learned from our customers a lot, and we watched that our competitors weren't investing or stepping up. They weren't investing in supply chain, which is why I told that story. And so I convinced the board of directors that we needed to become a juggernaut in terms of turning orders around fast, getting them on trucks fast, getting them to the stores when they expected them. And slowly but surely, when we got our core competencies, I could then go to Michael's and say, you know, you have 5 different suppliers of styrofoam, but we're the best. And here's why. And look at our records. Look at your own internal records. Mm-hmm. And slowly but surely, we started to acquire these smaller fabricators around the country, so we could be more than just a regional player. We could become a national and ultimately an international player. And then once we got great distribution, and ultimately we got to the biggest retailer in the world, but also we never lost track of our mom and pop dealers. You know, we installed technology, we had electronic data interface, but we still had people that picked up the phone and took orders from mom and pop stores.
Yeah, that's great.
We had a great fax machine program. As a matter of fact, when fax machines were just getting popular, we actually gave fax machines to our independent retailers because it saved us money if they faxed their order.
Yeah.
A $99 fax machine, it probably saved us a $25,000 employee. But there
innovative idea.
Yeah. But there were some people who still wanted to call in. And so we had that person there. We did. One of our slogans was, we never said no to an order. And always a way to figure it out. But we did everything we could to make it easy for the customer to deal with us. Yeah. And, you know, through the hard work of a really dedicated team of people that came from all kinds of backgrounds, I had to bring people in from all over the country with different skill sets. We turned that thing into from a small family business to a, you know, I'm proud to say we're called Vendor Partner of the Year at Michael's, and we were Supplier of the Year at Walmart. And, you know, I've had a lot of good luck in my life, but I actually have, down in my office downstairs, I have both badges because we were Supplier of the Year while I was at Wilton, and we became Supplier of the Year while we were at FloraCraft. And we celebrated with our employees, which is again part of the secret. We made really nice polo shirts that said Walmart Supplier of the Year that they could wear. And you know, in a small town, when they would walk into the local Walmart store, they were a celebrity.
Yeah, I bet.
We had the local Walmart store manager. They baked up a couple hundred cupcakes and brought them over to the factory. And we took him up on a high lift, and he gave a speech to them about how important the people in the factory were to get those orders in the stores. And I had a good relationship with my staff, but I used to say to them in staff meeting frequently, we're just overhead here, right? Those are the people who make it happen. Those are the people we have to listen to. When we were making a decision on a healthcare program or a 401k or anything like that, I would say, you know, all of us are fortunate. If this place blew up tomorrow, we could find a job somewhere. But those 300 people back there, they depend on us, and their families depend on us. So don't make a decision based on the people sitting in the office that are overhead. Make our decisions based on those folks out there.
Yeah. And I bet a lot of that came from those growing up years in Pennsylvania, in that community, and that blue collar culture where you saw how important that is. Yeah, that's great.
My final day in the company, and I've got kind of a reputation for like I got a sweet tooth. Instead of doing anything fancy, my HR department went out and they bought a couple hundred cupcakes. Of course, they were all black and yellow because they were Steeler colors.
Right.
And they accompanied me, and I'm not bragging here. I mean, I'm not bragging. I'm trying to tell a story. They accompanied me as I walked through the factory for the last time. And one of my HR managers had a magic, or not a magic marker, but magic marker. And she was making hash marks on the side while we were passing these cupcakes out. And I was getting hugs and kisses and high fives and handshakes and hash mark, hash mark, hash mark. And I thought, man, this gal's getting cheaper. She's counting the cupcakes. And when we came back to the office, I said, Patty, why were you making those marks on the cupcake containers? And she said, I was counting the people you knew by their first name.
Wow.
She said there were 240 cupcakes in that box, and only 4 people you didn't know on a first name basis, but you took time to introduce yourself because they were new employees. And that was the culture we built. It wasn't just me. All of the management team, all of the ownership, we knew that when we were out on that shop floor, we had to give dignity to those people who worked so hard. And potentially this could be the only job they ever had or ever wanted. We gave service and dedication. We had a 30-year club, a 40-year club, and a 50-year club. People that had been with the company since they were 16 and 17 years old.
Amazing.
We valued that culture and we valued those people. And at the end of the day, you know, when you got that giant order from a customer at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and you were going to be closed for the next 3 days, you could go out on the floor and get up on the high lift and say, okay, look, I know you all want to get with your families this weekend, and I appreciate that, and I respect that. We used to give everybody a turkey on Thanksgiving anyway, and they thought I was handing out the turkey that day. And I said, we got this big order, and we got to get it to the distribution center by Tuesday next week. And it's going to take a number of hours. And I don't expect anybody to miss Thanksgiving dinner. But if you could give me a couple hours Thursday, a couple hours Friday, a couple hours Saturday, maybe Sunday. And we always paid them generously, overtime and double time on the weekends. But when the chips were down and you treated those folks with dignity, they gave it back to you 100 times over. And you hit it exactly. In my mind, it's simple. I went back to that basket of tomatoes sitting on the back porch. You know, we were all equal and we're all in it together. And I just said, I'm the best factory. You know, when they'd run the local newspaper surveys about best place to work, we would always strive for that award. And we didn't have to strive for it because we get it every day. We listen to those people.
That's great. What a great culture and great leadership as well. I just, as you were talking over the last few minutes, I was picturing all these principles popping up in these like little boxes of things that you instilled there. I heard vision to become a national business instead of a regional business, listening to the customer, engaging with employees, building a company culture where everyone was valued, and what great principles you used to lead and build a great organization.
Yeah. I couldn't have done it without the wonderful people that surrounded me. I just so blessed to have a good team around me. But I'll give you one CEO principle that I used to use a lot, and that was, one of the things I used to say was, I reserve the right to change my mind. One of the things I learned on the dark side growing up to a couple of big corporations, that oftentimes management, leadership, maybe the top guy, gets stuck on an idea and takes you down a path, and you realize pretty quickly that it's not working. But sometimes egos and pride get in the way, you know? And I want to admit, maybe I didn't make the right decision. So when we were to make big decisions, I would say to my team, okay, we're going with this, right? But I do reserve the right to change my mind. We might go left for 3 months, and I may knock on the door one day in the boardroom and say, okay, guys, we're going right. Because again, if you're listening to your customers and the consumers, they're the geniuses, not us.
That's right.
So I always reserve the right to change my mind.
Yeah, you have to be able to change and adapt, especially in retail, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoyed our conversation on the Creative Retail Talks podcast today. Be sure to visit our show notes page for more information on today's show. And if you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, reach out to me at clint@creativeretailtalks.com. Creative Retail Talks is all one word. That email address will also be in the show notes. Hope you have a great day.